Brought to you by Telehelping, a virtual assistant staffing company for professionals.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cody Hall. I am the host of The Faces. Entrepreneurs Are People Too. And today I have a really cool special episode just for you. Occasionally, we like to do, current events. Not that we can stay too current with the podcast, but today we have a really awesome entrepreneur who's going to join us and talk a little bit about what it's like to be not only an entrepreneur, a man, but also Persian in a world where that is oftentimes in the news. And we're going to talk about how that could impact him, how maybe that challenges him in the day-to-day life. And, to be honest with you, it may not even. So I'm not going to even spoil the alerts. Shayan, he'll be able to tell us more about it. Sir, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks, Cody, for having me here. Well, that was a great introduction.
Dude,
uh,
only took 5 takes.
Fantastic. This is what it is. To your viewers as well, to listeners, so my name is Shayan. And as Cody mentioned, yes, I am Iranian. I grew up there and I spent about 17 years of my life there before I moved to Canada. And then my adult journey began, and I went to university there. I'm an engineer. Of course, I got to follow the entire Persian stereotype here, right? It's either Persian doctors, lawyers, or you're failing, you're in arts.
Which is hilarious considering the rich history of art from Persia.
I don't know how this happened or why this happened, but yes, the stereotype is true. So I studied in Canada. And I actually started working as an engineer. So I was working in startups, electrical engineer to be exact, and I was working on camera sensors, image processing, and that's where I started my journey. So I don't know if you want to, dig deeper and go further.
Curiosity.
Yeah.
I know we'll get there. Trust me, brother.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be real with you. It doesn't look like Canada in your background, right? Is this a virtual background you have going on?
So I am lucky when we continue and see what I now do. I am lucky that this position gets me around the world and I get to sit in cool places with beautiful sunny backgrounds. Canadians here know what I'm talking about when we say we struggle with the sun. But yes, no. So this is as real as it gets, and I can't be happier and more. We're fortunate to be able to live this life. So
It's hilarious, Shan. I'm actually looking at you, but really it looks like my background because I have a window on the side of my camera, and I have palm trees as well. I mean, we have very similar palm trees, and and that's the crazy thing about it. You are right. Entrepreneurial journeys do take us lots of places, and we were just joking. So you're in Canada, now you find yourself to, more of the warm tropical climates of Central America, and it takes us to some cool places. And so
absolutely.
what type of business are you in that takes you to cool places? You look like a travel agent. You look like a travel agent.
I could be. Yeah. Is it the low button here? But so let me give you a little bit of background of what happened. So it's sort of like build up to
Please.
why I'm doing what I'm doing, and the punchline is there was a little bit of a luck and a little bit of it wasn't planned. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So as I was telling you guys, yeah. So I studied engineering. I was working in startups. I was running startups, managing teams, doing designs. I'm a very, again, I'm giving myself compliments, but I worked very hard, and I was working nonstop, almost like every North American is.
How immigrant of you to work hard.
Exactly. And this exactly follows the immigrant Persian mindset. You want to put it that way. Hey, you have do the best of what you were given. So anyways, we put these money, and then, I was making money with my brother. We pulled it up and we put it into some properties at that time. And this is about 8.5 years ago now. And that sort of started this journey for us that we started investing in properties for short-term rental businesses, Airbnbs, hotels, boutique hotels, and stuff like that. And fast forward now, I no longer do engineering, and it got to a point of my career that, again, Cheers. Seriously, kudos. I'm very happy with the CEO that I was working with before in the engineering firm that gave me that opportunity because I asked for a month off and I said, hey, give me a month off. I'm going to automate everything. I'm a system design. I'll design system procedures. Give me a month off. I'm going to automate this little side hustle at a time that I have. And I'll come back to this. I do enjoy doing engineering projects. But then after a month, we tripled the number of properties and holdings that we had. And I went back and I was like, I appreciate you giving me this month off, but I respectfully have to resign from the position. And that sort of started this journey that we do, just very broad. We do, real estate and boutique hotel and property management in multiple countries,
No, I love it.
which gives me this background sometimes. And, for work, I have to do this. So I'm very bummed that, I can't be in Canada in the rain 9 months a year, but tough
Listen,
life.
someone has to do it, right?
I'm very happy it's me at this point. But
Well, you say such an interesting thing that I was actually just talking to a buddy of mine about. He is an ex-Marine, like myself, and we're talking, and he works in the security industry, and
right,
he's just talking, and I'm like, he's like, hey, I think that I don't want to work in the operations side of this anymore. I just really see a huge opportunity in the recruiting space for the whole all these folks coming out of the military, and then you work in these companies, they really don't have good people. They need better people. I was like, sounds like a business opportunity if you ask me, right? You identified a need and you feel like you have a solution. I was like, then what are you doing? He's like, well, things are so expensive. I'm like, well, recruiting is pretty virtual, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, so why? I'm like, you're retired from the military, so you get a pension. Like, well, save up some money, right? Get a little bit of a bed laid out for you, right? You get paid every month, right? And then while you're in operations, start conversing yourself into some contracts, right? And then
hmm
just get one contract and then build it, grow from there. Go off and you don't have to restrain yourself. Like you lived in Canada, made your way from Persia. I'm sure you're very happy with what the opportunity Canada gave you. However, right, something took you a little bit. You identified an opportunity, and it worked great for you, and so you ran with it. That is the entrepreneur. People think about it
exactly,
all day long. Entrepreneurs are the doers. Like they're not just like, "That's a great idea."
exactly. It takes a lot, seriously. And the
Yeah,
way that you identify the problem, find a solution. Okay, that's let's say 40% of it. The 60% is actually doing it.
yeah,
So, and not everyone really end up doing that. There's a lot of great ideas out there. There's a lot of big problems and people have solutions for it, but doing it, that mindset, that um this is what the hard work sometimes, you got to do it when you're not seeing anything back you got to see the goal behind the obstacles.
yeah.
So, which is why, I mean, like, if everyone had to do this, then, it would be a much better world, but
I wa-
opportunities would be much less.
I want to take a moment to share a very controversial thought process on what
Go for
exactly you just said, right? Just hit the F it button real quick, right?
Go for it.
I was talking to a friend of mine. Him and I, we own a small equities company. We trade large cap stocks and things, and so and indexes. And we're sitting there talking, and he is an idealist. All right,
Right.
he's an idealist who grew up one city block off of Central Park in Manhattan, which is
Okay.
if you're going to be an idealist, it's the best idealist to be.
Right.
And so if you don't know what a brownstone is, you should look it up. All right.
Br-
And so, the perspective that he has, like, man, everyone shouldn't have to struggle. And I said, well, I agree. I agree. Like, I wish we lived in a world where people wouldn't have to struggle. But I said, think about your life every day. It's just one simple day. Today, woke up, went to the store, came back to the store, went to the gym, came back to the store. And through all those process, I had someone pump my gas. I had someone sell me something at a gas station. I had someone stock that shelf, right? And everything that we run through life, as we move through life, there are these companies and these people inside these companies. And there's usually one business owner, right? Or a group of business owners. And then there's these huge staffs. And everyone in these
Right.
staffs are not always the best compensated, right? And they are, maybe because their business isn't a large margin business. Maybe it is a large margin business. But my point that I was getting to is that there's so much that goes into lifting up the top of a pyramid, like a very large base. And
Mhm.
it's difficult to have it the opposite way around, right? An upside down pyramid holding everyone up is going to topple over. And so I thought about all the time, like, I wish everyone could be an entrepreneur. Like, I wish you could experience how fun this is and how horrible it is sometimes. But at the same time, right, you can't. It's not made for everybody. Like, there has to be people who work for companies and things, and there has to be people who are inside the machines.
Absolutely. You can't have everyone leading, you know? If you call an entrepreneur a leader, that's not necessarily it, but someone is
Correct. No,
having
synonymous.
the
Yeah.
direction, you know? And I agree with you. And I think that's what makes it a possibility for people to explore. And as you were saying, it's fun and frustrating at times to be, you are responsible for what you do and for what your company does, or what if you have employees, what your employees, that they do
At
it,
all times,
at all times. And that's
everything's your responsibility or your fault.
absolutely. And then, like from outside perspective, it's, oh, it's fun. You have this many power. You work for yourself. But for me, what are the biggest struggles I have is that I don't have an off button. And this is trickling to the relationship with my fiance as well. And sometimes she's like, "Hey, you just gotta put this phone." My life runs a lot on my phone. Just put this phone down. But again, all these decisions come at a cost. Of course, the system needs to be designed to support you, so you're not like me at all times on your phone. But still, figuring it out for me, and this is something I'm still working on. When is that off switch? It's very hard, and I've been doing it for 8 years now. So I don't know how much longer I need.
It's, off comes at a price, right?
Exactly.
There's a,
Well
it's like,
said.
it's like running water, right? Sure, you can have the water running, but there's a trickle effect, because when you're not doing your job, it doesn't mean it's stopped. Like, this thing is still going, right? Like, we're on
Right.
this meeting right now. This thing is still going, right? It doesn't matter. It's on Do Not Disturb, right? It's still going. And people are still
Hmm.
messaging me. There's a meeting right after this one. There's a problem that's happening there. There's things awaiting my approval in our CRM. Like, there's things that always keep happening, and you can put it down. And I think that's oftentimes difficult for us as entrepreneurs to take breaks, because we know that it's piling up, right?
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's one thing that is why telehelping even has a market, and it's why I kind of get away with a lot of stuff, because I have a team of virtual assistants that just help me do my job, right? Because I don't want to do it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, 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 no. You're solving a big problem here.
Well, I
And
mean,
you're right on. Yeah.
if you think about it, you a man who runs nonstop, right? All the
Hmm.
time, every day, doing things that, I'm sure that you could probably give to someone else, but you're doing them, right? When I think I can give something away, I give it away.
Delegation is another thing that, like, it's for me, it's something that I had to work on, to be able to delegate, to be able to give out control. And the more you do, and the bigger this as you call it, pyramid, or the corporation gets, you realize that yes, you get to make few good decisions, and you got to let other people,
Yeah.
you know carry the weight. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's tough, because when you're doing everything yourself, and hey, listen, you've met my wife, right? And she
Mhm.
tells me this, it's like, no one's ever going to do it the way Cody does it, like, at all, ever.
Exactly.
And so the problem with that is that I want everything done the way Cody does it. So if I were to say, like, my number one, and my team's watching this right now, I want you guys to know this, right? You're watching this. You're watching this. I want you to know my biggest source of anxiety every day is the difference in my expectation for what they give me and what I wanted. And it's not that what they gave me isn't good. It's just not what I would have done. But I have to balance the two. It seems like, what was I doing while they were doing that? What was I doing there? But I mean, oftentimes there's times where I'm working out. My team's doing
Yeah.
things that I could be doing, or I'm at the beach, right? Going
Yeah.
to a bar, going to a bonfire on a Monday afternoon, right? That they're doing things, right?
Right.
What was the trade-off? And that I always have to remind myself that sometimes the good enough, don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough.
Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of professionals out there that when they listen to this are like, what did you just say? But this is exactly the rule that I have. If someone does it 70% of what I think they expect, like setting expectations correctly, that's number one. That sets you up for not being disappointed as a team leader or whatever. Having procedures in place, that's another thing that I'm learning. If I didn't tell you what to do, I can't expect you to do it the way I wanted to do it. And then the third one I've realized is like exactly no one does it same as you, or anyone. So if you're delegating it, have an expectation that it's not going to be.
No,
Yeah. And it's very sad. And people are saying, no, you shouldn't bring your, what is that? You shouldn't bring the bar low or the standards low. This is not it. This is just
no,
people react differently to situations. And you cannot have procedures, especially in my line of work, that situational, sometimes we're reactive than proactive. So you have to wait and see what happens to be able to respond to it. And because we're dealing with customers and people, sometimes it's not black and white. So it's there's no framework. It just runs
no.
on how that people handles the situation.
Truth matters. I'm never gonna be happy anyways, right?
That's
I'm
you know.
you're never gonna do it right anyway.
I'm trying not to say that because I want to say I'm there with you. So I thought it was me. I'm very happy to hear, hey, like hearing other people's problems really help you. Uh, so this is exactly what I feel as well. Like the struggles, we're in customer support, customer service. There's a big aspect of what we do other than investment. We're
Right.
managing people. We're managing experiences in destinations like this. So people come with high expectations, and especially in some of the remote locations, expectation. Exactly. I'm gonna go back to the main point. The main word is expectation. The guests are people who book with us. Sometimes, just because of where they are from or the expectations before, in remote location, they expect everything to be perfect. Blah blah blah. So when we're not 100, and we unfortunately we always want to be 100, but we got to be realistic. Sometimes we're 90. And that
Everyone
caused
wants to be 5 star.
everyone wants to be a five star, especially in my business, because reviews is what runs our business.
Yeah.
There's marketing and stuff like that. But us at the end, we have, investors with us, and we have actual, now you have the property, you have the building. Now you have to fill it up with actual guests. So we need to have both expectations set correctly and both try to be managed. So that's and we do get a lot of virtual help as well in that space, which there's a lot of capable people out there
I mean,
that
and
can work.
that's the truth of the matter is like you said it well. I mean, and I have short-term rental properties throughout
Yeah,
Vegas, and it's tough because like what are people expectations? My property descriptions are to a T, right? I even offer people a video. Like I will walk you through my rental properties in a video and tell you every nick and knack, every corner.
yeah,
I'm like, hey, listen, the water is really hot here, but if you go a little bit over here, it's perfect, right? I walk people through my properties all the time. And then some people watch the video, some people don't. And then I have like a 7-page, house rules, right?
yeah,
And so you do all that, and still, here's the hilarious thing, and still you'll have a person who can't use the August lock correctly and
yeah,
can't get into the house. Like yesterday, I had someone locked outside. Granted, they're from Ecuador, right?
yeah.
They had never seen a yell lock in their life, right? And I'm talking to and I'm talking to him in Spanish. I eventually had to get my wife to come use better art. I have like where he's not tracking with me. I'm not talking to him on WhatsApp. But no, 100%. Shane, one thing I want to kind of shift down into here is, um, you you came. We go back to the the immigration into Canada.
Yeah.
Why did you at that point in time decide to go to Canada? Like what happened to you that is like, hey, listen, I'm getting on a plane, peace out. Like why the change?
That's a very, very good question. I sometimes wonder, would I have done it? There are specific stuff happened in my life that sort of led me in this path. And I'll go a little bit back. So I moved when I was 17. Okay. And I sort of moved alone from the family back home. And my parents were still back home being Iran, and my brother as well. I have a younger brother. So my uncle had always, like years before that, had moved to Canada. Right. So this was for me. And we had gone and, visited. them for vacations. Summers, you go for 1 month or 2 months. And so there were our outposts, this is where we go for vacation. My dad grew up in France. So my dad always wanted
Cool.
us to, he's Iranian, but he studied again, he followed his lawyer. So he's a lawyer. Again, the
Okay.
stereotype is followed there. And then he studied in France for all his education. So he always wanted us to go that way. And I'm repeating this statement exactly as he told me. And this is before I decided to fully move to Canada. And he was like, European countries are a little bit different. And again, from my facial expression, facial features, colors, and stuff, I don't know how, if people can see me, you're listening to this. I don't look European, I do not look like I'm a French guy. And my dad is also the same. So he was like, hey, just have that in mind. This is 40 years ago when he studied there, of course, granted. But you will always be treated as a second tier citizen. Sorry. This is exactly his word. And he is a very well known lawyer in his field. Even back there, he's in France. But that was the reason that pushed him back to go back to the country. And he always wanted to go back and help. So, but this was always in my head that, hey, am I going to be considered a second tier citizen? You see this, I don't want to call it racism. I don't want to call it elitist. I don't want to call it whatever you want to put that. One European country versus the neighbor. There's a lot of still, let's call it racism or socialism, whatever you want to call. So it's not necessarily towards me. It's towards anyone not French, not Italian, not.
And French is just be very clear. If you don't know France or haven't been to France or know any French people, the French are the best of them. Mwah, when it comes to hating anyone if you're not French, right? And you even if you speak French to a French person and it's not France French, right?
Mhm.
You're a little bit low.
Absolutely. So this is what I had in mind because, like, think about this. You haven't really had an adult life. I know people say 17 is old enough, but I never really entered the job market. I was never on my own. I was always traveling with my family, with friends, you do that. But at 17, still you're dependent. 16, you're still
Correct.
dependent on your family. So, but I told him, I was like, I never felt the same way in Canada for all those visits and stuff like that. But it was at the back of my head, love Canada. I love how, at least this is 14 years ago, I love the lifestyle. I'm so from the West Coast. So the lifestyle is, I'm an athletic guy. So this is what I do. I like outdoorsy stuff. And that sort of fit with my lifestyle where I couldn't do back home. I'm from the capital. I'm from Tehran as well. So which is again, it's an amazing country for people out there. Please do not listen to whatever goes on. In terms of visiting and seeing, there's a lot to do, to eat, it's a completely different thing culturally as well. So I moved and then I was like, all right, let's be prepared for this, that I'm going to be feeling like, that little racism, let's put it that way.
Subtle difference.
Subtle difference. That's a much better word to put it. Luckily, I fell into that category because I'm very athletic. I fit in the groups of like the athletic groups, and I found friends very quick. So I went to basically end of grade 11 in high school. This is when I did almost grade 12. But because I was neither a graduate of Iran for high school nor Canada, I had to do some courses. I had to go back to summer school because you need a certain number of courses to be able to get your diploma. And so for me, it was great. And on purpose, I chose a non-Persian school because there are pockets so Canada has a large Persian population. And this is going to help me through the next phase of my story. I don't know if I'm boring you guys, but what I felt is that I wanted to immerse myself into the let's call it Canadian culture. That's a very broad term, but like so that
whatever it's mostly bacon syrup and snowshoes.
I know culture is a big word. Canada is such a young country, So
Correct.
yeah, right. So that I was just like, no, I don't wanna hang out with a lot of Iranians. I don't wanna hang out just because I wanna retain. I wanna be more white, you know? I wanna know what that is. So and it worked out well for me at some point, and I felt like, I fit in. I'm gonna go out and say this. I personally never felt that subtle difference. Part of that reason is I'm an outgoing, I'm very um I make friends easy. So, and I spoke the language, not as good as this. Obviously have more accent, more than this, believe it or not. But to me, it was I could communicate. I still didn't know. You go to high school. I still didn't know what people were talking about because their upbringings were different. The experiences they were talking about.
What we refer as the context. I tell it to people all the time about telehopping when they hire English speakers from Mexico versus from the
Right,
Philippines, because most of our staff has either educated, lived in the United States, has family, they're deported from the U.S. back to Mexico, so they've
right,
experienced the life with the language versus
uh-huh,
just the language in the actual verbal mentality, right? And
exactly.
and it's very much different. I run afoul in that in Spanish all the time.
So no, no, no. You actually like that's I'm gonna reuse this word. So yeah, the context of what they speak is not necessarily what I was used to. And I was
Yeah.
trying to fit in. So, you can communicate, but you can't keep a conversation up because I had no fucking part of my language, freaking clue what they were talking about here, you know?
Yeah.
And so that was something that when people said cultural shock, that was the only thing. I was already okay with everything else. It's a beautiful place. And I was like, biking out there. I was hiking every day, going to lakes, and jumping, swimming.
Um,
So that to me,
that's
I
awesome.
fit in. For me, it was very good. There are people, and I want to say that there are people who struggle. And I know of friends that moved and they couldn't fit in. So they decided to go back.
Do you think
But
that
that,
you think that's definitely more in line with sometimes we flaw? So me and you are you, me and my wife are very similar, right? Most of my friends in Mexico that I hang out with, like I would prefer they are primary Spanish speakers. And I want
right,
to speak to them in Spanish because I want to be around my Mexico culture, right?
right.
When my wife integrated to the United States, she's like, I'm hanging out with white people because I want to learn English, right?
Exactly.
Like I want to be assimilated into a degree, right? And it's interesting that you're saying that because I felt it in a different way and she felt it in her way as well, that we had a little bit easier path because
Uh-huh.
we chose a more difficult approach, right? And that
Exactly.
most people choose comfort.
And I think that's another reason that when I'm going back and looking at decisions that I made, this is, of course, hindsight is 2020. I'm like, that sort of describes why I changed my job. I quit my job, which was very comfortable, to do something that is uncertain, uncomfortable, harder. And part of this is your character, because I personally feel like if it's too easy, I can add on more, So when it becomes easy, you can add what that means that it's time to add to bring the next obstacle to challenge yourself with something else. So my life also is like I set goals, challenging goals, and I try to hit them and move on. Healthy, unhealthy, it's working for me. But
But you need them. But I also want to say is when something gets easy, fit in something that's healthy occasionally, right? Like I ca-
absolutely.
I can't do too much relaxation.
Mhm.
But, I was like, well, I'm like, wow, well, I had someone else come on board. They're taking some of my job. I guess lets me off an hour earlier now. I'm like, you know what? Start going to the beach every afternoon, right? I want to make that a thing versus like, man, I have a whole extra hour. What could I figure out in this day? Can I message more? Can I get more leads? Can I contact more sale? Like
Yeah.
things like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
More doesn't always mean more.
and this is where I am now. So I am with you now that in a sense that, at some point there's a finish line. There's a done for the day type of thing or done for right now. I want to go to the beach. I want to do what I like to do, but I don't want to, I'm taking a tangent again. So I moved to Canada and I always had that in my mind that I'm going to be treated as a second tier citizen. When that proved itself to be wrong, then I was like, okay, that means that I'm accepted and everything is good to go. And I continue with my life. But the first, I think every immigrant, I don't know how some people, as we were saying, like us, they would like to put themselves in a situation to really assimilate to some point. But some people choose their own kind, like they'll go and they'll only speak with their own friends from their own country, even if they've traveled to Canada or whatever, even if they're immigrants. And this can continue.
Yeah.
I chose the other path. That led me through, open up some opportunities for me. I went to university there, of course, and I studied there. So for me, that negative in my head always, because so to hit your point, sometimes being Iranian and Persian, because of what goes out there, and the news and stuff like that, has some sort of negative connotation to it, depending on the country and what you're, what they're used to, what they've heard about your country,
And my thought process there is, and help me out here. When you tell someone, when someone asks you, especially in
Mhm.
Canada, right?
Right, right, right.
You come down to Mexico, you're a little bit brown, darker hair. Like I am 6'2" and white, blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm not Mexican, right?
Right.
But you can slide by sometimes when you start speaking. However,
Absolutely.
when you're in Canada and someone says, "What's your nationality? What's your
Right.
ethnicity?" and you're like, "Oh, I'm Persian. I'm from Iran." Like,
Right.
what crosses their mind in your mind? Like, what do you see them seeing?
Okay. Yeah. So like this goes two ways usually. There's a lot, and this is what I mean. Like I might have, maybe not be here if I went to France. But if I had this conversation living in France, my answer would have been very different than Canada, just for the fact that luckily there was a lot of people before me that probably felt that, that subtle difference of how people treated them, so that I became normal.
That's a great perspective. You're standing on the shoulders of those who before you went, like your dad 40 years earlier, who
Absolutely.
experienced second class. And so you're
Mhm.
sitting here, I would experience it less because of the experiences they had. That's a
Absolutely.
that's a wonderful perspective.
People need to also know this about Canada. Canada is an immigrant country. Like it's in a sense that it is built on immigrants. That's what I mean. There is no Canada has the 30 something million population right now, even so small, by bringing a lot of people. It's all immigrants, right? So the mentality of acceptance is there compared to other North American countries out there that I don't want to name, but like that, even though they are also all immigrant, but Canada did a better job, in my opinion, than accepting or putting that it's okay that to some extent.
Yeah.
I know there are people out there that are experiencing it, so I don't want to belittle that. For me, from my experience, that didn't happen. I couple points I got recently in my life that I look more Iranian as I'm getting older. The receding hairline is a sign of that. Unfortunately, I couple occasion I recently felt it back in Canada, and I was like, all right, that's what that the other half of the people. This is how it feels like now. That someone's to your face, some say, they say something, they believe it's a joke or funny, but it's fully racist, right? Just because of the color of my skin. But I'm the guy. I'm like, you're one. There's a lot of idiots out there, so I never take it upon myself that I did something wrong. But on a couple of occasions, I felt the true racism. Other than that, to answer your direct question, I chose Canada because my uncle was there,
Yeah.
and so I had a base to start, and I could see myself there lifestyle wise. And when I came in, I really didn't feel that, hey, because I'm saying I'm Iranian, not getting um, the the I'm getting a different, reaction from people. There are sometimes when I say Iranian, people are not used to this, or
Yeah.
they're from different countries, and they're like, so how big on are the camels there? Literally, like I was asked that question. I'm like, dude, it's one of the most advanced, like Tehran is a mega city. There's like 20 million people living there, right? So
That's so
it's
funny.
it's so funny. You see that, and that's ignorance. That's full ignorance. And I understand that not everyone needs to know about Iran. That's okay.
Yeah.
So I try to
Well,
educate.
it's closed off to the world, right? And so it's a little difficult for some people. And I think that let's be real for just a second. Ignorance isn't racism, people. right? It, not knowing something doesn't make, and I'm guilty of it all the time. I used to think that Mexico was a Central American country, right? I'm like, oh, it's Central America, right? Which turns out it's in North America,
North
right?
American.
Right? It's a North American country. Like, wow. And I'm like, my wife's like, don't say that out loud, right? And that's okay. It doesn't mean that I was like shunning Mexico from the North Americans, right? It just means I was like, I grouped it with a different language set. Right.
Right.
I'm like, oh boy, like, it's a different country. It's south of us, Central America. Right. And I think that is okay so long as people are, kind about it. Right. It's okay to be ignorant in a way that you're, curious, like inquisitive. But, I think oftentimes with Iran and other countries like Iran, right. And it comes down to a simple respect of, where do you find yourself in the countries? And I say countries, right? United States as well. Because when I moved to California for the first time, like you go to California, and I'll be honest with you, there's more mean people in California to different, shades and backgrounds and origins than I've ever met in the Southeast. However, being from the Southeast, I've seen some really racist things.
Right.
Some really racist things, right? But also at the same time, like, I've experienced people who go back and forth. When I first came to California, like, oh, where are you from? I'm like, oh, I'm from North Carolina. Like, wow, do you guys really like, you really dislike black people over there? And I was like, what are you talking about? Right? I don't understand. I'm confused by your statement. Like, yeah, isn't the Southeast really racist? I was like, is that the belief of San Diego? I was like, is everyone, if you're like south of this area? And it's oftentimes there are, very racist things that happen all the time. Right.
Right.
And I've seen them happen. I've seen them happen to my wife. Right. But I think oftentimes we think too often that maybe ignorance is racism and we get sensitive to it. And I think the level of sensitivity of the person who may be experiencing the ignorance could also make them believe that it's with ill intent. Right.
Absolutely.
And being ignorant doesn't mean that you are trying to be insulting. It just means that you don't know. And maybe that's how they react sometimes. So it's my piece there.
No, no, no. That's very true. Again, if you don't know anything, for people out there, ask it rather than assume or have a one-sided question. The way you present, and again, this comes from knowing customer service, the way you present your question says a lot and sends a lot. The body language also.
It's so true.
But with that being said, Canada is much more from my experience, and I've been around, and I do tan very quick, so very very easily. It's so funny, and I don't want to say this way, but like sometimes the reaction I get when I'm like extremely tan, or when I'm in Canada for 6 months, I become like very light. In different countries, the way you're treated is different because people put you in different baskets based on how you look. So this still happens, of course, but the way you like for me. Or for other, immigrants out there, the way you handle yourself in those situations says a lot and can fully change the direction of the conversation. To again, and I say that there's a lot of racist things happens. There's a lot of racist people out there. It's just we don't need to react to all of them. That's
No,
my piece on this.
no, and I 100% agree with you. And I think that, you know, my perspective on this, and one of the reasons why I thought it would be great to have you on, because it's interesting to have these perspectives. Because oftentimes, I ask myself, right, what are the challenges that one would face of Persian origins during a time where Persia is in the news frequently. And I think,
Correct.
from the conversations that we have, you and I face bigger challenges for being immigrants in Mexico than we do and then you do likewise for being Persian in Canada, right?
Right.
And that's just part of the game. And I think that regardless of where you're from and where you live, you deal with a set of assumptions from the people who you're living around, the culture you live in. And I think that it happens to me every day. People do things, say things to me as a white guy walking through Mexico that they do only because I'm a white guy in Mexico, right? And they get away with it. And that's okay. I don't take offense to it, but I really appreciate you coming on and having a perspective. I think that you represent really what so many people should want to do, which is be daring, right? I think that you represent someone who has been daring in their journey, right? Going to another country and like, you know what? I'm not going to go to a Persian school because that would be comfortable. And I'm not going to ever be Canadian if I go to a Persian school, right? I'm always going to be a Persian who lives in Canada, right?
Right.
And I'm always gonna primarily speak Farsi over French or Canadian English, right? As I call it. So,
Don't get me started. Yeah,
so it's a great perspective to take.
absolutely. No, well, thank you, Cody, for having me. It's again, just I wanted to just mention something that
Please.
in your last sentence as well. Yes, so obviously being on the news doesn't help us, but at the same time, it makes it even more. I still have family over there, and I worry about them every day. So this is something that, it sort of adds on to the complexities of life or as an entrepreneur that now for me as an immigrant, again, being an immigrant in a third country, now we're Mexico now. Now you have to be worried about half of your family in the other side of the world as well. So it's
Yeah.
more internal. And of course, that changes the view of the world about people. And I hope moving forward, that doesn't happen just because, putting people in stereotypes is easy, even though stereotypes were created because a lot of people fall into it. But I want everyone out there to always understand and remember this that, hey, everyone is different, each have their own story. So, and like, we need more inclusivity, in my opinion, in the world. That's my last
No.
bit. Yeah,
Well put. And I think the way I heard that is you can't assume a person's journey by the color of their skin or the accent in which they speak. You don't know. And
you never know.
Shayan, thank you so much for joining me today, sir. I hope you have a great rest of your day and off into the weekend. And I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Have a
Be
great
well.
day.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.